It is your weekly program that allows Barbadians the opportunity to share that rich history and heritage of their communities and so enrich the lives of all of us. I'm Sherwood McCaskey. As always, I'm pleased that you have joined us. Now, maintaining an optimal level of social wellness allows you to build a healthy relationship with others. Having a supportive social network enables you to develop assertive skills and become more comfortable with who you are in a social situation. This week, my community begins by looking at social life of the folks in this area.
Now, I spoke about St. Mark's Church social hops and fairs and excursions, but I didn't say anything to you about some of the other activities which College Savannah people could go to outside of the boundaries of College Savannah. There was the City Hall Casino at the time where you could go dancing. As a child I couldn't go, but as I became an adult, of course, you could go. And when I became a member of the Anglican Young People's Association, which at first met in the St. Mark's, what we call the St. Mark's Old School. This is now a parish center next to St. Mark's Church. We used to have dances. The AYP used to sponsor dances, very often in Kings Park or in the St. Mark's Boys' School. If you want a bigger crowd, you went to Kings Park. And in those days, live bands played. The Blue Rhythm Combo would have been one of the bands heard. You had the Serenaders, you had the Escorts. A whole set of bands would come up there and play. And people, large numbers of people congregated in Kings Park to hear the bands. Of course, the AYP also brought concerts to the area. And this is to increase the range of activities available to the entertainment available to the residents. And Joseph Niles, the first time people in this area saw Joseph Niles and the consolers at the time was when the AYP brought him into a concert at the St. Mark's School, and then he went to St. Mark's Church to perform. So the number of activities available to the residents of College Savannah and the neighboring districts, of course, became more varied as time went on. And who could forget the ubiquitous mobile cinema? Now, the mobile cinema usually went to the St. Mark's School, and I remember the picture which most people wanted to see was Bud and Lou. It was a comedy of the ridiculous with Bud and Lou, and everybody went to see Bud and Lou. Let me also say to you that in my boyhood days, even when television came, CBC came on the scene, there were only, I think, let me make sure I'm accurate, 2 television sets in College Savannah. And we tried to get near the windows of the houses to see pictures on CBC. Of course, some of those pictures, I saw that y'all were featuring some of them recently, but I'm trying to remember some of the ones that we were particularly interested in. There was one with Dracula, yes. Right? Dracula. Yeah, and then you could go home and you couldn't sleep once you'd seen Dracula. But the point is that we did watch television. Not many people had radio either until radiofusion became fairly widespread later. And I remember as a youngster going by my uncle. He had a radio I didn't have one at home at the time, to listen to cricket from Australia. I followed cricket from very young with that Frank Worrell team in Australia, the famous Test and so on. I would have heard on radio. And my mother didn't like it, but my father would take me home very late because we were listening to cricket. And once I was with him, everything was fine. So he went home. But you enjoyed those cricket commentaries. There's a big difference between listening to radio, a cricket match on radio, and watching on television. You had to use the imagination, and our imaginations develop as we listen to Wes Hall bowling those famous overs in Australia, right? So, and I knew almost every cricketer. That is why the boys in College Savannah playing cricket would call themselves after the names of several cricketers. The boys who didn't particularly like the West Indies for some reason called themselves Neil Harvey and Jeffrey Boycott, all kinds of names. I favored the West Indies team, so my favorite batsman since I was an opening batsman was Conrad Hunt. I thought so. Conrad Hunt was always a favorite of mine. Of course, when I was on the field and bowling, I was the Garfield Sobers. We wore quick sobers with the collars up and all that type of thing. So that provided good entertainment for us. As I said, television sets were not widespread until later. Then almost everybody got a television set. But by that time I was an adult. But as a child, we simply didn't have that luxury. CBC brought a lot of life to the area, and a lot of good entertainment at the time to residents. All right, so that was that. Now, politics. I'm not going to say anything that is going to put the station in trouble, so don't get worried. When I was before I reached the teen years, before Barrow came to power, the Right Excellent Barrow came to power, we had a local government system. Because I remember my mother and father voting in local government. And I remember too, politicians who were trying to become elected to local government would come around and hold meetings and try to encourage people to vote in local government. Local government system. So as a child I heard about E.D. Mortley and those people from very early. Local government came to an end early in Barrow's term of office. And then the whole things like general elections used to intrigue me. I was always I would get a blood rush when it came to general elections because I like listening to the politicians on the platforms. I don't go now. My father took me from very early, from age 5, to listen to politicians. So I heard people like Jack Deere, and I heard Fred Goddard, and I heard Sir Grantley Adams. As a child, I listened to them. When Eric Barr came back, I heard him, and so on. And then they used to keep meetings in College Savannah. And once we had electricity in the area, my house was the focal point. Our house in College Savannah for meetings. Meetings were kept just around our area there, and they would use electricity from our house, and I would listen. Of course, you can't sleep. I would listen to meetings, listen to both the Barbados Labour Party and the Democratic Labour Party having meetings at the time, and there was also the Barbados National Party until that party went out of existence. But I heard all kinds of politicians about it, the earlier politicians, and the speeches used to be of a fairly high standard at that time, and of course the humor was great. There was a lot to laugh at, and share. But I wasn't particularly interested in which part it was who, but I was more interested in the level of the speeches, and of course, as a young boy, the humor. When I was 16 years old when Barbados became independent, and so I followed the independence political campaigns, and I found those to be very interesting. I was at that young age, because I was interested in history, and I always had a problem with the monarchy, and I'll tell you why in a minute. I'll tell you what happened in a minute with that, a little story about that. And when independence was coming, you know, you just felt this rush, and you were excited about independence. And we listened to all these speeches and the reasons why we were going independent. My father was not particularly keen on independence, but I certainly was as a youngster. But let me backtrack and tell a little something about my attitude towards the monarchy. I was a boy, I was no more than 7, when Princess Alice came to Barbados. And my class teacher forced me to carry the British flag down to Palmer's Corner. The corner which would take you, if you continue north, you would go to Cotton College. Now she was leaving Cotton College to go to Sam Lodge Castle. And the thing is that the rain was drizzling. And here was this member of the royal family in the car, and her windows were up, and you could barely see her, and you had to wave and so on. Because I was threatened by the teacher that if I didn't take the flag and do what I was supposed to do as she saw it, she would report it to my father. Now I knew what would have happened. So I took the flag. That I never forgot that. That was imprinted in me, and I always had a difficulty when we had the Queen's birthday and all these things, you know, and Empire Day, and I had a problem with that. So when Barbados was going independent, I was delighted that we were going out. I'm sorry that we didn't go Republic at the same time, but anyway, the point is that we did become an independent country. So that was my experience with the royal. I have never gone to see any member of the royal family come to Barbados here. You know how people assemble, go all the place and waving at the Queen and the Prince, and not me. I don't even watch it on television. Let me tell you how bad it was. I did not even watch the marriage of Princess Diana and Charles. Things I didn't do. That was it. I'm sorry that if it sounds bad, but that is the way it was for me.
Well, research has shown that there are a number of us who share that view. Let us learn of the loving nature of the families here in College Savannah and a number of those familiar stories that was experienced by others who presented in previous episodes.
Most families in College Savannah were a result of common law unions and sometimes visiting relationships. There were a few examples of nuclear family, but families were loving. The kinds of disunity, the kind of disunity that we see now in families didn't exist at the time. People related well to one another and helped out one another. And then, of course, that extended to other members of the community. People in the village live like family, notwithstanding what I said about playing pranks on people and so on. And you had to respect people. I remember once, my mother was not on good terms with one lady, and I was walking with her near to my aunt's house, and she didn't speak, so I did not speak either. Well, I felt a stinging slap on my jaw. And she said, "You and she's any company?" So I knew from then that regardless of the relationship between my parents and anybody in the village, or in fact any adult at all, my attitude must be one of respect. And so I learned that lesson very, very early, one which went me right through throughout my life up to this point. So people shared what they had. That's why I told you earlier that hunger, real hunger, was not known in the community. People shared what they grew. And as I told you earlier, the fishermen shared their catch with you. So you always had something to eat. You know, regardless of how poor you were, you had something to eat. You may not have the best clothes. And a lot of the boys wore pants with patches and so on. But you had something to eat, you know? And the foods in the village, macaroni pie was not known at the time when I was a child. This macaroni pie thing is a new thing. Sunday was either rice or soup. And that was the only time really during the week that you would have meat. You know, there was a butcher in College Savannah called Carl Davis, and he killed on Sunday morning. So people gathered to buy their mutton, their liver from the sheep, and so on. And of course you got pork as well, and so on. And people cooked that either in, people would cook the mutton either in rice, or with rice or with soup. The other days of the week, you would have fish. You could have fish, or you had no fish or meat at all. Soup could be boiled with this split pea soup, was a big thing. I never liked dumplings. Most people are surprised about that. But I know that dumplings were a big hit with soup. People said, in fact, that it was nothing called soup without dumplings. So that was a a big thing. You cook what was called in the village dry food. That's what they called it, meaning they would cook ground provisions without. Sometimes they would buy mackerel or something like that and cook along with it, or salted fish, right? So that was the kind of food, and we didn't realize at the time that ground provisions provided nutritious food. You see, because you know when you're ignorant really to those things, you thought that those things were not nutritious, but we were being fed nutritious food and didn't know. When the sea egg season was in, of course, we had sea egg soup, fried sea egg with rice, all these kinds of things. That type of food. Of course, the boys went gully cooking, and you would take some of what your parents would have at home, or you could put together a few coppers and buy flour to make dumplings, or and you go and do this gully cooking. And I sometimes the food tasted all right. Sometimes the dumplings had too much baking powder, and lift the cover off the pot, and so on. But we had great fun learning how to. I was never a good cook until, well, even now, not a good cook. But the point is, we tried our hand at cooking, imitated what our parents would have done. I was never taught how to cook because my father objected to my mother teaching me. His argument was that he didn't give her a girl child, he gave her a son. And I became sorry about that later, but that is the way it was. But I did try my hand with the others, with the help of the others, when we went gully cooking. So food was in plentiful supply, and as I said before, we shared it. Boys would come by my house and I would share my food or whatever with them. Since we grew corn was there, and you would have roasted corn. Sometimes the corn was ground, and you have the cornmeal, because of course you had to make conkeys. You know that we call the conkeys stew dumplings as well, right? Conkeys would have been a delicacy even today. Now at Christmas, that's when you get your first ham. Ham was not like every day people can get ham now. As a child, you got ham, you look forward to ham at Christmas time, because your parents would make sure that there's a ham there, and you waited with bated breath until it was baked and so on, and then you had that. So I would say, as I think I indicated before, that we always had something to eat, and at special times of the year we look forward to special kinds of food. You know, after Christmas always seemed to take very long at that time, and after Christmas you were running on Christmas, you know, because what was available, sorrel, what was called pudding at the time, but now everybody refers to cake. It was pudding to us at the time, sweet bread, whatever available at that time. So I would say that College Savannah was a great experience growing up. A good foundation was provided for me growing up, which I have taken through my life. I grew up not understanding too much about violence, except I saw it on TV. There was very little violence around. My father taught me never to hit a woman, so domestic abuse would be a no-no for me. I remember one occasion at primary school, there was this girl in the class. This is when the schools were mixed. We had senior school. I was over by the senior school just before the examination, because we didn't have common entrance at that time, you know. You did a screening test, which we call the screening test, and then you did an exam for a school. All right, and she used to pinch me all the time. And one day it was so bad that I gave her a cuff. Even the teacher said, "You're right." But she went home and told her mother. The mother told my father. And he came home the next evening, and he asked me about it. And of course I was taught not to lie. So I told him, yes, I did. And he administered a corporal punishment, because he said, "I told you, under no conditions must you hit a female. I don't care the reasons you are given. Don't do it. It is cowardly and it is wrong." So I learned that. That was one of the two lessons, very important lessons he taught me. Let me give you a quick last one, the one quickly. The shop, the Mina Taylor shop I told you about earlier. My father was a chain smoker. So a packet of trumpeter cigarette at the time, I don't think you know what trumpeter, costs 35 cents. My father gave me 50 cents and sent me to the shop. I went, and the shopkeeper, I think, was distracted, and she gave me back 65 cents, as though it's $1. I was very happy. I came home, and I was speaking to my cousin about it and boasting about how he got the 65 cents. We were looking at how we were going to spend it. I did not. My father, who was in the garden, heard. He called me outside, and once I heard that voice, I knew something was up. And he says, how much money did I give you? 50 cents. Can't lie. How much change did you get back? 65 cents. How much change you were to get back? 15 cents, Dad. And he said, now walk back to that shop. I don't care who's in shop. Apologize to Miss Taylor. Give her back the change that's not yours. So I had to do, that's one day he spared me a flogging. The lesson went home. I went all the way back to the shop and to the money. I learned from then never to be dishonest. So it is difficult, it will be difficult for me to take money that is not mine, in fact anything that is not mine. Right? So that would, they taught you important lessons. Yes, sometimes you got flogged and you didn't like it, but the lessons that came along were important. So, as I said, the upbringing I had in College Savannah, the relationship with people, all that taught me a lot about life and living, and I am eternally grateful for that kind of experience.
And we are grateful to you, Mr. Goddard, for sharing aspects of the social history of College Savannah here in St. John with all of us. You have just filled an important cog in the history and heritage of this area of Barbados. Now, as I end, I think it's important that I once again make that appeal to our students and researchers to revisit these presentations and use them as primary research tools as you write your papers, your theses, and your books on the social history of Barbados. Well, thanks to Sir David Seal and the folks at the People's Market, this series, My Community, returns next week at the same time. I'm Sherwood McCaskey. Be good to yourself and look out for the interests of your neighbors.